Brandon Phantom? How's it going? Hope you guys are doing well. Today we're about to get into new Rockstars final Loki breakdown. The Loki episode 6, Easter eggs and details we missed. If you haven't seen my reaction yet to the Loki finale, you can go into the description below or click the annotation above. It was my first time reacting to something, so it might be a bit rough if you do go see the video. Yeah, I love this series overall. The last episode was fantastic. That scene with Kang with Sylvie and Loki, absolutely incredible. So good. Yeah, so let's get into the reaction, and then we'll have my final thoughts afterwards.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Boss, and this is a breakdown of Loki episode 6, the season finale for All Time Always, which deprives us of Jet Ski Mobius, but except for Jonathan Major's wickedly talented performance as he who remains a variant of Kang the Conqueror. Look, there's so much deeper meaning hidden in all the details of this episode, so let's break down this finale frame by frame to celebrate
absolutely
theory right for a change. Also, you can get our Loki-inspired merch at newrockstarsmerch.com, like our
might have to get one of those.
And our Loki Gator Polo, and Mobius on a jet ski shirt, but the window is closing fast, so you gotta jump on
come on.
Okay, Marvel Studios.
I need that.
Actually hear the music of It's Been a Long, Long Time by Harry James and Helen Forrest, which first played in Captain America the Winter Soldier, and then more memorably in the final scene of Avengers Endgame. That was the moment Steve Rogers created one of the many variant branches that could have destabilized the Remains sacred timeline. Now we hear other iconic sounds from MCU past, which at first play over the character as they appeared in the Marvel title animation, but then build into a cacophony as the timeline orbits around his citadel in a flat circle, time unfolding all at once from his perspective. But because I'm insane, I've broken down pretty much everything hidden in here. Iron Man's repulsor.
Aww.
Falcon congratulating Ant-Man during Civil War.
Way to go, Tic Tac! Way to go, Tic Tac!
Hope Van Dyne flying to Scott Lang and Ant-Man.
That's how you punch. That's how you punch.
Hulk roaring. T'Challa's salute in Black Panther. Spider-Man's web shooter. Scott's first meeting with Falcon and Ant-Man.
You wouldn't have heard of me. No, you wouldn't have heard of me.
Natasha talking to Coulson in Avengers.
Let me put you on hold.
Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Dance off, bro! Dance off, bro!
Wow, every single one of them.
Thor in Ragnarok.
It's a friend from work! It's a friend from work!
Cap versus Cap in Endgame.
I can do this all day. Yeah, I know. I can do this all day. Yeah, I know.
Mjolnir, I think, reverting to Cap in Endgame. Younger Hank Pym and Ant-Man.
I'll show you ferocity, and I'll show you ferocity.
Carol Danvers and Captain Marvel.
Higher, further, faster, baby. Higher, further, faster, baby. That's right.
Loki to Thanos in Infinity War.
We have a Hulk. We have a Hulk.
Korg to Loki in Ragnarok.
Yep.
Let's jump on that ginormous spaceship. You wanna come?
Bucky in Winter Soldier.
Who the hell is Bucky? Who the hell is Bucky?
Peter Quill planning in Guardians of the Galaxy.
I have part of a plan.
Natasha to Loki in Avengers.
I got red in my ledger. I'd like to wipe it out.
Doctor Strange to Dormammu.
Dormammu?
I've come to bargain.
Vision to Ultron.
I was born yesterday.
Hulk to Loki in Avengers.
Pure God.
Thor to that shield big guy in Thor.
Bigger.
Fury's speech in Avengers.
There was an idea. Stark knows this.
Hawkeye's speech to Wanda in Ultron.
You are an Avenger.
Loki's final words in Infinity War.
Oh, wow. I did not notice that one.
Banner's big line in Avengers.
That's my secret. I'm always in.
Hank Pym and Ant-Man and the Wasp.
You sent my suit for the mail?
And it sounds like the voice of Carly Morgenthau in there from Falcon Winter Soldier. And Caecilius to Doctor Strange.
Time is the true enemy of us all. Time is the true enemy of us all. Time kills everything.
And then it ends with a subtle baby cry.
Good health starts with good sleep and a ring. Aura is the most accurate and personalized health technology.
Now this one is actually hard to find, but it is the sound of baby Loki crying in that flashback in Thor of Odin taking him in when he was a frost giant ward. Now you'll notice there's a bit of a Loki bias among these, since this history is being filtered through the perspective of a witness observing Loki's entire life start to finish in particular. Then we pull out from our solar system, now hearing a lecture from philosopher Alan Watts about time. Watts argued that time isn't really the past causing the events of the future, but in truth, just an imaginary concept that we perceive from where we are in the present, similar to the non-linear way humans perceives time.
Man, that's interesting. That is so interesting.
Armstrong's first words on the moon. Meanwhile, a mysterious ship soars past us. Now, this doesn't look like any of the Guardians of the Galaxy ships, nor one that NASA would use, or one that I think Sword would use, especially this far out in the solar system, but I'm thinking it could be one piloted by Kang enemies, the Fantastic Four. Then we hear the voice of climate activist Greta Thunberg. As all of the galaxies, our known universe appears to be contained within this blue sphere, which then condenses and then explodes. Maybe a depiction of the Big Bang or a future Big Bang, an event that would have created the Infinity Stones. Then we hear the voice of activist Malala Yousafzai, and then the voice of Nelson Mandela. As Tchaikovsky's music from Swan Lake plays, representing a battle between light and dark, like the apathetic yet still benevolent variant of Kang versus the darker, more menacing variants who end up conquering in the end. We realize everything we have just seen has been set inside of one black hole that neighbors another, as the music shifts like a radio dial to Beethoven's Für Elise. Which he wrote as an ode to his lover, perhaps reflecting the way Kang's actions may have been für Ravonna. Everything we're seeing here is really an astronomical geography of the spatial relationship between these universes, which He Who Remains later describes as stacked on top of each other. And then we dive into that second black hole, a separate reality now, as we hear the voice of classic Loki from last episode. And then we briefly see one planet colliding into another. Perhaps this was Lamentus 1. And then we stretch into 2001 Space Odyssey Stargate as we hear first Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's 2006 speech.
Yes, sir. Motivated by women throughout the world.
And then Vision's big line from WandaVision.
What is grief? If not love, persevering.
And then poet Maya Angelou. That was from a poem with verses about her history being rewritten, which does happen to Sylvie and Loki at the end of this episode, but no one remembers them. And the final things we hear during this montage are Sylvie's voice from last episode.
Open your eyes.
And then some Morse code beeping. This could be the 1962 Morse message that was beamed out to space. And we see the Citadel at the end of time, with this cracked design, which is also reflected in He Who Remains Time Twister on his wrist and his tableau goo. Looks a lot like kintsugi pottery, representing how He Who Remains likely had to piece it together from broken shards of that past multiversal war to create this kind of neutral ground, and foreshadowing the way that this timeline will splinter and crack once more in the episode's end. Flanking this entrance are two giant hourglasses, and staying true to this series' Wizard of Oz parallels, their slow walk down the hall does mirror the nervous...
Such a great shot.
Just revealed that man behind the curtain is a far more comedic figure than we expected. But before we even get there, Miss Minute scares the shit out of us in this chamber with looming hood figures with clocks for faces. Kind of like a creepier form of what Miss Minutes essentially is, a clock-faced greeter. And note how later she's late to meet Renslayer, therefore she cannot be in two places at once. And she offers them this deal.
He's worked it out so we can reinsert both of y'all back into the timeline in a way that won't disrupt things.
Similar to the offer made in The Matrix to the humans. Really, this whole episode is kind of playing out like the architect scene in Matrix Reloaded, but a lot more fun to watch. Miss Minutes offers Loki his chance to rule.
You can kill Thanos.
Yeah, Natalie Holt's violin theme returns, the music that played over Loki watching his own life back in episode 1, but not to his own death, but to the deaths of Frigga and Odin. That is who he's really thinking about in this moment. A chance to see them in Thor again. Now, trailer footage showed some shots of King Loki on the Asgardian throne and back at the top of Stark Tower. Presumably, these were going to be shown here as Loki imagined these possibilities. Now, back in the TVA, Renslayer notices Mobius ring stains on the table, something that he did not remember leaving, which could connect to his total memory reset at the end of this episode. Making me wonder, the TVA could have been reset before all this many times, similar to how in Matrix, that was actually the 6th incarnation of the Matrix. Ravonna gets a mystery file.
He thinks this will be more useful.
Who?
Yeah, notice how here Renslayer does not seem to know who He Who Remains is, but in the later scene, she suddenly seems more agitated, and she gripes that he's the only one with free will. So what did she learn from this file? Well, later, Mobius reveals that Renslayer actually came from FDR High School in Fremont, Ohio in 2018, where she was apparently the principal, based on her having an office, and that Ohio State diploma, listing her name as Rebecca Tormenay, an alias that Renslayer actually uses in the comics when she goes to the year 1903. So I love it. She goes from a name sounding like Terminate to one sounding like Slayer. Now, on her desk, we see more pens like the one that we saw. And around this school are posters of FDR, but also Eleanor Roosevelt in her office, and then a bunch more posters of coat drives, and this being homecoming week. And that is interesting because homecoming is, of course, normally in the autumn. But autumn 2018 in the MCU would have been a few months after the snap, which occurred in the spring of that year. So perhaps this coat drive is for displaced kids and families during the blip. And the reason she joined the TVA could have been blip related. Because Ravonna Renslayer is, of course, Kang's love interest in the comics. So maybe here in the show, he put something over her. Like she could have been destined to have been dusted, and that could have left behind a child who died without her. So, to keep her sacred timeline self undusted and that kid safe, she continues to work for Kang as his objectified doll.
I have to believe they had a reason.
But here, upon learning this truth, she leaves through this time door.
Where are you gonna go?
In search of free will.
Which could be her searching for a reality with a different Kang variant who might give her a better deal, which could lead to the Kang the Conqueror, who overtakes the TVA in the final scene. But back in the Citadel, Loki and Sylvie reach a chamber with these ceiling cogs and pendulums and bells, but then on the floor, a depiction of the lunar cycle. All of these are various ways of keeping time. But also, timekeeper statues. 3 still standing, but a 4th one shattered. In the comics, there was a 4th timekeeper named the Oracle of Siwa, who was exiled to ancient Egypt for informing the Fantastic Four of events to come. Perhaps this statue was shattered during the past multiversal war between Kangs, and He Who Remains couldn't put it back together. Or this could be some evidence of a past attempted uprising in one of the past TVA resets, where one of the timekeepers betrayed He Who Remains to help a variant get to him, and then He Who Remains responded by expelling that one faulty timekeeper, destroying the statue that represented him. But then the man behind the curtain we've been talking about is revealed.
He Who Remains. She still calling me out. Creepy. Right, well. I like it.
Yes, He Who Remains is actually the name of the elderly TVA caretaker at the Citadel at the end of time who builds the timekeepers in the comics. And although he's never explicitly named Kang in this episode, He Who Remains is 100% confirmed to be a variant of Kang the Conqueror. Jonathan Majors was cast as Kang for Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania. He is dressed like Immortus, who is another form of Kang from the comics. He said that his variant was from the 31st century, when Kang Nathaniel Richards was born. He calls himself a conqueror. And yeah, this pays off all the clues the show has given us, from Renslayer to Alioth to the Tower for Kang Enterprises, the shell company, Renslayer's ID of A23, which was their appearance together in the comics, Avengers 23. And notice how here the light casts his face in blue, like his comic book look. Now notice he eats an apple, which can mean a lot of things. First, it's a symbol of Newtonian knowledge, boink. And later on, in his office is this chalkboard with equations that use integrals. And if I remember from Calculus AP in high school, this is calculus, and Sir Isaac Newton is credited as a co-creator of calculus. But the apple also recalls Doctor Strange's use of an apple to first demonstrate time manipulation in the MCU, but also reminds us of that episode 2 word problem from Miss Minutes that asked about the last MCU big bad, Thanos, using him eating apples as an example. Of course, apples are also associated with the forbidden fruit of the Garden of Eden in the Book of Genesis, used to tempt Adam and Eve by the serpent, and in this episode, He Who Remains offers these Adam and Eve figures Avengers' chances to be gods and refers to himself a few times this episode as the devil. Now, to pull off this effect of He Remains dodging Sylvie's blows, Hiddleston and DiMartino must have had to shoot their action on a green screen and then had to be layered into that elevator with Majors. But this render was left just rough enough around the edges that leaves the characters and us feeling emotionally detached from this seemingly untouchable immortal. He Who Remains reveals this is all scripted, and we see if you look closely at his book that Sylvie is ID'd as variant L1190. And notice how he lists the book. I like how he does a subtle little adjustment of his time twister to draw attention to it, since this is the key to controlling the room. And I think he ultimately wants Sylvie to take it and kill him so that he moves on in a more dangerous form. Like, I think the Council of Kangs know that Loki and Sylvie's union make them true Nexus beings that threaten their empire. And so He Who Remains really feigns this candidness with this phony offer to replace him, while really he is driving a wedge between them the whole time.
It's all a manipulation. Interesting that your head would go to that. Sylvie! You think you can trust this guy?
He Who Remains later says,
Without the TVA, everything burns.
Jonathan Majors is having a blast, hamming up the eccentricities in this jaded...
It was a really good performance.
Tone. He's constantly moving to new physicalities just to punctuate and lighten this monologue. Kind of like a guy on the last day of his job. Super dangerous, super fun to watch. You could actually compare him to Heath Ledger's Joker, who also says similar words.
Everything burns.
And when he's seated at his desk, he's framed with his head in the middle of his spiral window in the background. Kind of like the whole universe orbiting around his egomaniacal personality. And he explains a variant of himself in the 31st century discovered parallel universes the same time as other variants.
For a while, there was peace. Narcissistic, self-congratulatory, peace. I love your shoes. I love your hair. Oh, man. Nice nose. Thanks, man.
Yeah, Majors might be joking about his own recognizable nose, but really he knows he is sexy. We see how the Kang variants invented time doors, reset charges for computers, pruning sticks the TVA used, but they ended up in this multiversal war. Meaning that Miss Minutes Animation was actually telling the truth about that, just that it wasn't the Timekeepers who ended it, but He Who Remains apparently repelling these even worse evil Kangs. The figurines shapeshift into prayerful and grateful poses. He says,
I've lived 1,000,000 lifetimes. I've gone through every scenario. This is the only way.
Similar to how Doctor Strange said that he saw 14,605 future outcomes, but that only one was a successful way forward.
There was no other way.
Now, of course, He Remains' offer is very much like a Willy Wonka-style offer to them to take over his job. But I love how Majors nods at that with his pose here.
Or you're a liar.
Or I'm a liar.
Yeah, laying it on his fist, just like the Willy Wonka meme. And as he says he is older than he looks and that this game is for the young and hungry, the camera pulls back from him, making him look smaller and smaller, more diminished in the window spiral, as if his influence is appearing to fade. And then he snaps at Sylvie.
Grow up! Grow up, Sylvie! Murderer! Hypocrite!
Similar to how Caecilius called out the Ancient One.
Hypocrite!
Because among sorcerers, no one really has the moral high ground. But then everything shifts in this scene.
But now, you have a chance to do them for a good reason. We just crossed
Such a great shot.
the threshold.
Yeah, that thunder was the sound of the sacred timeline breaking up. And fitting to use thunder for that, because as it branches, it does look a lot like heat lightning, evoking the moment the Ancient One slowed down time in the moment of her death. A similar moment where she, just like He Who Remains here, could not foresee beyond that point. So what caused this? Ragona's pact with another Kang? Or could He Who Remains justifying free will subversion have been the thing that Sylvie decided she was just going to kill him no matter what Loki told her? Either way, that break makes it so that when Loki returns to the TVA, it has already warped and reset so that a different Kang is now ruling over this one. He Who Remains removes his time twister and slides it over, but notice how his gesture, again sliding his hand across the table, in the framing makes it look like it is still on his hand, which could be a clue that this offer is really a bait and switch because both alternatives lead to his victory. Loki and Sylvie duel, and upon their early clash, He Who Remains jumps in his seat in the corner in excitement, which is similar to how Palpatine loved watching Luke and Vader fight. Before that, Anakin and Dooku fight, because either way, the mastermind has already won. It's so tragic to see these two fight, largely in the way it parallels what Loki told told Sylvie as an answer to what love is back in episode 3.
Love is a dagger. It's a weapon to be wielded far away or up close. You can see yourself in it. It's beautiful until it makes you bleed. But ultimately, when you reach for it.
Oh, wow.
Loki wields his love for Sylvie up close and can see himself in her, but she makes him bleed. And when he reaches for it, it isn't real. Instead, classic Loki's wisdom really reigns supreme.
The blades are worthless in the face of Loki's sorcery.
But despite all this, Loki does make a key concession.
All I know is I don't want to hurt you. I don't want a throne. I just want you to be okay.
Signaling that he learned the core lesson that Sylvie laid out for him earlier this season.
This isn't about you.
But as he tumbles back through the time door into the TVA theater, the window lights on the floor go in opposing directions, which is odd because presumably they're coming from the same exterior light source. The way these lights parallel Loki and Mobius' opposition in episode 4, they now mirror the opposition between Loki and Sylvie. But on a more literal level, it also shows how this new TVA that Loki has found himself in does not revolve according to the same gravity as the old one did. So Sylvie stabs He Who Remains and he winks and says,
See you soon.
yeah, back in episode 4, after Sylvie beheaded the Timekeeper android and the other two shut down, if you listen closely, you could hear a voice whisper, "See you soon." Yes, the voice of Kang.
Really?
Was calling his shot back.
Oh my gosh. That is cool.
The sacred timeline splits into branches of branches of branches, and the chronomonitor screen confirms that many of these branches overlap with each other. And looking back at the cosmic version of it, some regions grow a bright red, which could be the incursion that we saw in WandaVision's post-credit scene, and been the cause of Wanda suddenly hearing her children calling to her from another reality. So yes, we are looking at the multiverse of madness that Doctor Strange 2 will take place in, where the Scarlet Witch will be the rising threat he has to face. Perhaps even a logical basis for how Alfred Molina, Doc Ock, and Jamie Foxx Electro will appear in Spider-Man No Way Home. Hopefully we get a trailer for that very soon. Meanwhile, Loki finds the TVA change as he passes a bunch of hunters who don't really care about him. It's hard to tell, but one of these must be Hunter K5E, listed in the credits as Eugene Cordero, meaning Casey must have either got promoted or in this alternate TVA, instead of being a desk clerk, he gets to be a hunter. And then in the archives, he finds Mobius and B-15, who have no idea who he is, which is really odd, because even before he was a detained variant, Loki was the freaking god of mischief with an infamous reputation, so this must have been a hard memory wipe reset. The Timekeeper statues have been replaced with He Who Remains variant. In this case, it is Kang the Conqueror, which we know because he's wearing his Conqueror wardrobe. This might remind you of that final twist in Tim Burton's 2001 Planet of the Apes with the Lincoln Memorial, but just by looking at this, while the TVA may change on the dime, its true creator is now, thanks to Sylvie, for all time, always. And the credits confirm that Loki will return for a second season, and with the confirmed appearance in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in February 2023, I'm thinking season 2 could come at the end of 2022, or maybe in the first weeks of 2023 to lead into that film. Ant-Man and the Wasp left a quantum city in the background that I've been theorizing could be Kang's kingdom of Chronopolis. And Kang in Quantumania could live beyond that film to be the villain of a future Fantastic Four film, or an Avengers Secret Wars conflict. But whenever we see Kang next, with an actor as talented and versatile as Jonathan Majors, it would not surprise me if he brings a whole new characterization to his Conqueror variant. We still have much to learn about him, and that is what makes him so dangerous and so delightful. I want to thank you all so much for joining me on these breakdowns of Loki. This show is a true masterclass in world building and storytelling, and I hope the details and connections I've been able to find have enriched the viewing experience for you. Don't worry, I'll be back with plenty more Marvel theories and future breakdowns, so be sure to subscribe to New Rockstars, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EABoss, follow New Rockstars. Thank you again for watching. Bye.
Definitely do that, guys. Definitely do that. Man, that was definitely probably their best breakdown yet. Seriously, that episode was just fantastic. I'm not getting why a lot of people don't like that. Yeah, people just love action and whatever, but it's like, come on. That's not what it's all about. Come on. That whole dialogue scene with Sylvie and Loki and Kang, probably one of my favorite MCU scenes in the MCU. It really is a fantastic scene. Seriously, so good. Man, what an episode. Seriously. Woo. Anyways, guys, yeah, that was my reaction to the Loki episode 6 breakdown from New Rockstars. Go ahead and go over to the channel and subscribe to them too, because yeah, they have so many great videos. And if you're new here, go ahead and check out my channel for other video reactions like these, trailer reactions, movie reviews, top 10s, and a bunch of other film-related content. If you are a new subscriber, don't forget to click the bell to get notified of future videos. If you are a returning subscriber, I seriously appreciate you. If you would like to support me, I have a Patreon where you get early access to videos and a bunch of other content there that comes to there first for YouTube, or even not even YouTube, it just stays on Patreon. Like the episode of Loki, I actually have the full-length, unedited reaction there. If you have a Twitter, you can follow me there to get updates of the videos and new movie news and a bunch of other stuff. I have a Discord if you'd like to follow me there. Join there and just interact with me and a bunch of other people there. So don't forget to like this video. It helps with the algorithm. Comment down below what was your favorite part of the video, or what you thought was like amazing about this breakdown, or what your thoughts were of Loki, the season finale. Share this if you think this was worth a share. Appreciate you guys. Stay random.